Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Chaitanya Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Chaitanya Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Chaitanya Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Chaitanya Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Sakala Bariya Achi Prema Gula Pali.
Sakala Bariya Achi Prema Gula Pali.
Vashaila Chi Jagat Krishna Prema Jali.
Vashaila Chi Jagat Krishna Prema Jali.
Eka Eka Sakara Shakti Anta Mahima.
Eka Eka Sakara Shakti Ananta Mahima.
Sahasravadani Yara Diti Narasima.
Sahasravadani Yara Diti Narasima.
Sakala Bariya Achi Prema Gula Pali.
Sakala Bariya Achi Prema Gula Pali.
Vashala Chi Jagat Krishna Prema Jali.
Vasila Chi Jagat Krishna Prema Jali.
Eka Eka Sakara Shakti Ananda Mahima.
Eka Eka Sakara Shakti Ananta Mahima.
Sahasravadani Yara Diti Narasima.
Sahasravadani Yara Diti Narasima.
Sakala Bariya Achi Prema Gula Pali.
Sakala Bariya Achi Prema Gula Pali.
Vashaila Chi Jagat Krishna Prema Jali.
Vashaila Chi Jagat Krishna Prema Jali.
Eka Eka Sakara Shakti Ananta Mahima.
Eka Eka Sakara Shakti Ananta Mahima.
Sahasravadani Yara Diti Narasima.
Sahasravadani Yara Diti Narasima.
Sakala Bariya filled Ache, there is Prema, love of Godhead, Gula, flowers, Pali, fruits, Vashaila, inundated, Sri Jagat, the whole world, Prema, Krishna Prem, of love of Krishna, Jali, with water, Eka Eka, of each and every Sakara, branch, Shakti, power, Ananta, unlimited, Mahima, glorious, Sahasravadani, in thousands of mouths, Yara, of which, Diti, to give, Nari, becomes unable, Shima, limit. Translation: every branch and sub-branch of the tree is full of innumerable fruits and flowers. They inundate the world with the waters of love of Krishna. Each and every branch of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's devotees has unlimited spiritual power and glory. Even if one has thousands of mouths, it would be impossible to describe the limits of their activities. I'm just going to go on with a few. I have briefly described the devotees of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in different places. Even Lord Shesha, who has thousands of mouths, could not list them all. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishnadas, narrate Sri Caitanya Caritamrita, following in their footsteps. We're just moving on to the next chapter now. I offer my obeisances unto all the devotees of Sri Nityananda Prabhu, who are like bumblebees collecting honey from his lotus feet. I shall try to describe those who are the most prominent. All glories to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Anyone who has taken shelter at his lotus feet is glorious. All glories to Advaita Prabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, and all the devotees of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Nityananda Prabhu is the topmost branch of the indestructible tree of eternal love of Godhead. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I offer my respectful obeisances to all the sub-branches of that topmost branch. Prabhu is an extremely heavy branch of the Sri Caitanya tree, and from that branch grows many branches and sub-branches. Watered by the desire of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, these branches and sub-branches have grown unlimitedly and cover the entire world with fruits and flowers. These branches and sub-branches of devotees are innumerable and unlimited. Who could count them? For my personal purification, I shall try to enumerate only the most prominent among them. Both by Srila Prabhupada. One should not write books or essays on transcendental subject matter for material, name, fame, or profit. Transcendental literature must be written under the direction of a superior authority because it is not meant for material purposes. If one tries to write under superior authority, it becomes purified. All Krishna conscious activities should be taken for personal purification, not for material gain. Jai Shri Jai Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Caitanya Caritamrita. So this is one of the angas of devotional service, hearing from sacred literatures. And the Supreme, in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a nice verse, chapter 14, when Krishna said, "Again I shall declare to you this supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, knowing which all the sages attain the supreme perfection." This is, after many, and there's another verse of Bahunam Jamanam Manti, after many lifetimes of spiritual or religious practice, one actually may be situated in pure transcendental knowledge and understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God, the ultimate goal of self-realization. Now, by such realization, it is said one naturally becomes free from all material entanglements and develops pure love for the Supreme Lord. So this knowledge, we understand, it descends from the spiritual world, from Krishna, and can be received through this disciplic succession, this parampara. And it's considered to be, by all spiritual authorities, to be far superior to all other processes of knowledge. This knowledge received through disciplic succession from a divine source, coming from Krishna himself. So this hearing sacred literature is a very important part of our spiritual practices. It is said that we all have the ultimate potential to taste and experience this divine love, which is lying dormant within each of us. So this is one of the practices for awakening this love, is hearing sacred literatures. Everyone likes to be entertained. People in general spend so much time and energy, don't they, in the world, watching movies, watching TV. Practically speaking, it is said that out there in the world, in the modern day world, life begins and ends in front of the TV. By the time a child can first hold their head up, they're watching TV. I give that example. When I go and visit my mother, she's just glued to the TV. The only time she talks to me is during the commercials. And even then, I got to tell her, turn it down, because I can't hear your voice over the commercials. Because they just. Yeah, people spend so much time and energy, listening to music, reading newspapers. Prabhupada gives that example of that Christian priest. He was preaching, that, you should believe in Jesus Christ. If you don't, you'll go to hell. He was preaching to the miners, the coal miners in England. And they said, "Oh, hell? What's hell?" They said, "Oh, very dark and dingy, no air to breathe, cold, horrible place." They said, that's like we experience every day, down in the mines, And then Prabhupada mentioned, then he told them, "There's no newspapers there." And they went, "Oh, no newspapers." Prabhupada talks about people how they carry the newspaper under their arm. They're very proud of the newspaper, you know. And you see that out there in the world, people, it's like their sastra. Every morning they're there reading the newspaper. People spend so much time in these things, you know, surfing the net, you know, gaming and, you know, just listening to music. So as I said, you know, imagine if people devoted that time and energy to hearing stories and teachings that offer enlightenment. You know, Bhakti scriptures call this type of hearing Shravana, dedicated quality time to hearing sacred literatures. Shravana. Actually, Prabhupada said, you know, we should, you know, Prabhupada was a good example, even when he was very busy with his pharmaceutical business as a grihasta. Every night he would read Bhagavatam for 2 hours. And it's also recommended for us, you know, we read at least 2 hours a day. At least 1 hour a day, actually, sorry. Of course, if you can't fit in 1 hour, you can always do 20 minutes 3 times. But reading is so important because unless we read the scriptures and understand why we're doing this, why we're practicing Krishna consciousness, why we're performing devotional service, then after some time, you know, we don't even know why we're doing it or why we're here. After some time, you may start thinking, well, you know, what am I doing here? Surrendering my life to Krishna. You know, no material enjoyment here, don't get holidays, no pay, no superannuation. I'm wasting my time, you know. People lose perspective of the reality of why we're actually here. It's so important to read. Also, hearing lectures on spiritual matters, you know, because there's so many. It's like Prabhu is distributing these little speakers, you know, the Prabhupada. I think he's got like thousands of Prabhupada lectures on there. So nice. And there's so many other lectures coming from the gurus. And Prabhupada mentions that, you know, generally if you're a philosophically minded person, you naturally want to know about the origin of creation. You want to know in essence, who am I? Who is God? What is my ultimate purpose in life? What happens at death? You know, why am I experiencing these dualities constantly? Happiness, distress. So following these bhakti teachings, as devotees, we've come to realize that trying to define this world, you know, trying to understand this world, using our flawed perception just definitely isn't the best process to really understand things as they are. And I think probably many of us had that experience as we're growing up as teenagers in this world. It's very confusing, actually. You know, sometimes, you know, many of us have had this experience when you see just a superficiality of blatant materialism and how it's not really giving people happiness or satisfaction. It gets a bit bewildering because, you know, there's so much propaganda pumped out through the media telling us what success is, what it means to be successful in life. You know, people get into all sorts of trouble, you know, taking out huge loans and living beyond their means and trying to, you know, live up to a certain status quo. Sometimes I think it's called nervo-rich. You know, some people, they live a very high life, but it's all balanced on 5 credit cards. If they lose their job, you know, suddenly they've lost their house, they've lost their car, you know, their whole life, you know, goes into turmoil. So we realise, you know, trying to understand these things, you know, and many of us would probably had the same experience. I mean, I had that experience, completely confused, you know. What is this world, you know? What's my real purpose in life? You know, people, well, you know, how can I get more meaning and purpose into my life? So just trying to understand these things using our own brains and own intelligence and power of logic and reasoning, you know, we come to realise it's not the best process because, you know, the Bhagavad Gita, you know, explains that because human beings have these 4 defects. They can only have partial knowledge. And what are those defects? People make mistakes. We're subject to illusion. We have defective perception. And we also have this cheating propensity, which means humans have a tendency to speculate, concoct, misinterpret, create theories of their own. And this is why it's mentioned here in this verse, how, scriptures, one has to be authorized to write transcendental literatures. And it's because of this tendency to speculate, concoct, misinterpret, for the name of fame, whatever. We see so many people, big scholars and religionists and philosophers and even politicians in India writing their commentaries on Bhagavad Gita and misinterpreting the Vedic literatures, conducting big, Pandal programs where they speak the Vedic literatures and Krishna's pastimes in their own polluted way, and people think it's very authorized. But it's all cheating. Simply cheating. So Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about two types of knowledge. We've got the ascending knowledge and the descending knowledge. The ascending knowledge is, knowledge coming from this world. Various cultures over time. We see there's different philosophical methods have been developed by thinkers of the world to assist in understanding truth and knowledge. Understanding reality, trying to understand reality. We've got things like, you probably heard some of these systems, you've got ontology, cosmology, epistemology, theology, axiology, aesthetics. There's many others, actually. So many. It's knowledge coming from this world. It's called ascending knowledge. Knowledge which has been coming from humans. But in our bhakti tradition, we learn about another process of receiving knowledge. The descending process, or the parampara system. It means knowledge passed down from a divine source via these pure representatives, the bona fide spiritual masters, or the Vaishnavacharyas. So what is the parampara? It means hearing from a bona fide guru, or one who has heard from a bona fide guru. And that guru has heard from his master, and that master heard from his master. And in this way, if you go up and up and up and up, back in time, you reach the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, who is the original spiritual master and original guru, the original source of all knowledge. So this descending process coming from the Supreme Lord is just perfect and complete. And it's said to be the most perfect way of receiving knowledge. Of course, Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita that this descending knowledge is called Rajaguriyam. Rajaguriyam, a very well-kept secret. And the opening key to this great treasure house of wisdom is association with the bona fide spiritual masters coming in a specific succession. This is the process recommended for knowing the absolute truth. It cannot be understood simply by mundane scholarship, mental speculation, material intelligence. And Prabhupada mentions that one can only really understand something of the unlimited when it's revealed to us by the unlimited, or those connected to the unlimited. So to help guide us and help educate us, we see that the Supreme Lord and his representatives have given us these Vedic literatures. Sometimes the Vedas is called the timeless wisdom of India. And it constitutes the largest mass of sacred knowledge coming from the ancient. ancient world. Actually, it is said that the Vedas, 90% of 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 the Vedas is said to comprise of like a whole library of books, like 120,000 books. Actually, they've got the Harry Sawyer Buddhists. I went there actually in Calcutta, south of Calcutta. They had the Bhaktivedanta archives. It's amazing because they've collected all these books. Actually, there's they met many Indian there's a lot of Indian congregations who've had collections of books, rare books, written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Goswamis, and they actually even had a team of devotees who travelled all over India, microfilming every scripture they could find. Even scriptures written on temple walls and everything, and they've got it all preserved here in this Bhaktivedanta archives, because so much knowledge and so many books, these Vedic books have been lost over time. But the devotees, they've got this project to try and collect as much as we could and preserve it. So according to authentic sources, the Vedas is the original spiritual knowledge given at the beginning of creation. And it was imparted by the Supreme Lord, we know, to Lord Brahma, who's the first created being in this material universe. This particular Brahma appeared about 2 billion years ago. And this knowledge has descended from him to us today. And, the Vedas, they contain so much information and knowledge. Everything, it is said that everything a human being needs to know for both spiritual and material well-being. The Vedas teach basically how everyone can live comfortably and happily in this world, and at the same time gradually attain perfection while moving progressively at one's own individual pace, according to one's nature, one's commitment, one's motivation. And for those who are exclusively just seeking genuine spiritual insight, the Vedas supply all the necessary knowledge and direction and nourishment to achieve life's precious goal. And of course, for us devotees, we have that very essence of the Vedas, the Vedic knowledge given to us by Srila Prabhupada when he translated the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Caitanya Caritamrita. Everything is there, the very essence of the Vedic knowledge, how to achieve life's precious goal. How to achieve pure love for Krishna through this process of devotional service and go back to this kingdom of God, Goloka Vrindavan. But these Vedic literatures, they do warn us. There's a warning there that if we simply add our material logic and argument to this Vedic knowledge, what happens? It will become different and different and more different. There's that, we see that in the Caitanya Caritamrita, Krishna Dasa Kaviraj, he's calling the Mayavadis. He's addressing the Mayavadis. He said, "My dear misguided interpreter, why should you suggest such fallacious logic? An interpretation can never be accepted as evidence. It opposes the principles of revealed scripture. For lying, defective perception, mistakes and cheating does not occur in the sayings of the authoritative sages. But if you are indeed interested in logic and argument, kindly apply it to the mercy of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. If you do, you'll find it strikingly wonderful." Then he goes on to say, impersonalists and Mayavadis who depend upon their poor fund of knowledge and morbid speculative habits cannot penetrate into the mysterious region of transcendence, where the supreme truth is a transcendental person, Krishna. They can only try and enter they cannot enter the spiritual region from the mundane platform. So, therefore, we're continually advised that if we to try and understand this Vedic knowledge in the association of skilled Vedic, you could say Vedic academics, or the Vaishnavacharyas, the bona fide spiritual masters who are authorized to comment on these transcendental literatures, like Srimad Bhagavatam, Caitanya Caritamrita, Bhagavad Gita. And we see that. So many of the Vaishnavacharyas have written just elaborate commentaries on these amazing transcendental Vedic literatures. And that being specifically empowered by Krishna to enlighten us, elevate us spiritually, and bless us with genuine spiritual understanding. And that story of Prabhupada, this one man was glorifying Prabhupada. He said, "You've written such nice books, Prabhupada, such amazing books." Prabhupada said, "Actually, I didn't write these books. I was just the instrument. I was just the instrument for writing. It was actually Krishna was dictating to me what to write." We see that through Caitanya Caritamrita too. Krishna Garuda, so he said, "Actually, I have no qualification to write this book. I'm practically blind. I'm very old and invalid, but somehow or other Krishna is guiding me, is directing me what to write." So the genuine spiritual master can really elevate us spiritually and bless us with genuine spiritual understanding. Without such guidance, we see that throughout all the Bhagavatam, for instance, and the Caitanya Caritamrita, there's like a storyline and a philosophical line that just weave their way through the scriptures. And because actually, especially in this age, people are very less intelligent. So through all these pastimes and stories, Krishna's teaching us a philosophy. We see that in the Caitanya Caritamrita. We see Lord Chaitanya, even though he's Krishna himself, he came as a pure devotee to teach us how... Oh, I think we just got cut off the power. You want to check the box? Oh, just check the...
Around the back,
No, just there. Just around there. Let's take it off. So we've got this philosophical and storyline just weaving their way through the Bhagavatam and Caitanya Caritamrita. So without the proper guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, we won't be able to grasp the philosophical messages so cleverly that weave their way through the storylines. So hearing these Vedic literatures means immersing ourselves in just a deep spiritual culture which is just saturated with the highest knowledge. And one of the symptoms of a person who is advancing in spiritual realization, and this is a kind of a test for us, how much we're advancing, is that we just want to hear more and more and more. We want to learn more and more and more. We want to know everything about Krishna. We cannot hear enough, especially topics directly related about Krishna, which it is said, these topics, because they're not different to Krishna, they always remain fresh, always new. Despite repeated readings, you can just go on reading about these pastimes over and over again, and they're always fresh and new. So this is the meaning of transcendental or spiritual. Because, as I said, these topics about Krishna are non-different to him. So when one hears such topics, one actually penetrates into the presence of the Supreme Lord and one directly associates with him. And the Bhagavatam explains the result of that is that one's heart and consciousness become completely purified, and one is immediately lifted to the topmost stage of self-realization, which means all one's material illusion is completely destroyed, and one develops great attachment for the Supreme Lord and great love for the Supreme Lord. As a note, actually, there's a pastime, when Lord Caitanya, after he returned from Gaya, after being initiated by his spiritual master Ishvarapuri Maharaj, his mood changed drastically from being a very sober Brahmin scholar to a pure devotee of Krishna. And he was just manifesting all these ecstatic symptoms. He was like crying and shivering and laughing uncontrollably, rolling on the ground, his hair standing on end. However, we see that he controlled these emotions to some degree in order to socially interact with the people around him. And at his own school, he used to sit by the Ganga, and he'd be surrounded by 1,000 students, and he would teach them. But the students could definitely see he wasn't the same as before. Lord Chaitanya's changed his teachings. He's not teaching us the same lessons. Whenever he was now giving instructions, everything somehow was connected to Krishna. Some of these students complained to Ganga Pandit. He was Lord Chaitanya's Sanskrit teacher. They said, Lord Chaitanya, Nimai Pandit, he's lost his Brahminical edge. He no longer, he's only talking about Krishna. He doesn't want to challenge anyone in philosophical debates. You please go and talk to him. So Gangadas Pandit, he came to talk to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to Nimai Pandit, the next day. So Lord Chaitanya, he understood. He's got to have a meeting with his students. So he took the students. The next day he took the students down by the Ganga under the trees in a very beautiful place. And he said, Nimai Pandit's school is the best because I always give you the best. But I must tell you, after I got initiated by my spiritual master, I realized that Krishna is the supreme absolute truth. And all these other things are simply superficial. He said, I understood from my spiritual master that nothing has any real meaning without Krishna. So how can I not teach you about Krishna? Otherwise, as a teacher, I'd be cheating you. Then the top student of his school, he stood up and said, My Lord, you taught us that the goal of life is to simply win debates, to be the best scholar, to be the best logician and debater. If you tell us Krishna is the ultimate, then you have to teach us this. If you tell us Harinam Sankirtan is the best process, you cannot expect us to be surprised because you never taught us these things. But we don't want to go anywhere else. We want to be with you. We want to learn from you. And all the students stood up and cheered, saying, yes, we want to follow you, Nimai Pandit, and learn about Sankirtan and devotional service to Lord Krishna. So this Krishna consciousness, bhakti yoga, it's open to everyone to come and experience how true spirituality just opens the door to an extraordinary life of transforming consciousness and awakening our natural love for the Supreme Lord and our natural love for each other. Now, Lord Chaitanya, he said he's the most munificent bestower of love of Krishna. He's the complete reservoir of all mercies and good fortune. And anyone and everyone can join the Sankirtan movement. You don't even need any previous qualification. Anyone can just come and become a part and access this incredible mercy which is just being given by Lord Chaitanya. And anyone who's fortunate enough, like our good selves, to be attracted by Lord Chaitanya and follow his teachings can easily be released from the clutches of material illusion and gain the goal of the human form of life. Bhagavad Gita tells us, the most important choices we want to make in life are choices that address our highest well-being, our spiritual well-being. It's all part of, when you think about it, it's all part of just loving yourself, catering to your real self-interest, planning out your best future, making your life more meaningful and your destiny more beautiful. So and of course, Krishna consciousness, bhakti yoga, it's an open process. It means it's up to each individual, each one of us, to determine how much we want to be involved. Krishna doesn't interfere with our free will or our independence. In the beginning, we may just start by simply, chanting Hare Krishna, reading some of Prabhupada's books, and as we become more and more enthusiastic to make advancements and get involved, we have temple programs, festivals, preaching activities, a whole range of service options, how we can please the Supreme Lord and get his mercy and blessings. So it's a very wonderful opportunity for people. We always, quite often when I'm preaching, like at the Bhakti Center or to people that are not involved, we have to always try and explain that to people. That it's an open process. It's up to, it's not, we're not forcing anyone. Some people think to become a Hare Krishna or to join a religious or spiritual institution, it means you have to become a blind follower. Because even if you follow Krishna consciousness blindly, it doesn't matter. It's still going to get the benefit. Of course, you probably won't last for long. So ultimately, Krishna, he doesn't want our blind following. That's why he spoke these Vedic literatures, so our following will be knowledgeable, so we can understand why we're following it, why we're practicing Krishna consciousness. Of course, we also tell people that that talk to us like that out there in the world, who's not a blind follower? People follow so many things blindly. So much media propaganda. People follow religions. They follow so much scientific theories. They follow certain trends and fashions, and people are just locked into this whole materialistic culture without even questioning, why they're doing it, or what the benefits are of following that system, or what the goal. So many people join religious or spiritual groups don't even question what the goal is of following that particular thing. There's so many people out there. They accuse us of being blind followers, but actually they're all blind followers. So Krishna, he doesn't just want our blind following. He wants us to follow with knowledge, and therefore it's so important that we hear this Vedic knowledge. We every day try and read these Vedic literatures, and it's because I heard once, when you're reading to yourself, if you read aloud and you're actually hearing the knowledge as you're reading it, it's even more beneficial. And I find that's really nice, actually. You read aloud, you can really seem to be able to absorb. And you shouldn't read too fast. You should read slowly and try and absorb the knowledge. And it's very nice, actually. At least try and read an hour a day. I'm sure everyone can find an hour a day to read these Vedic literatures. Prabhupada once complained that his devotees are not reading my books. People are not reading. He's written all these books and devotees are not reading them. So I'll just finish there. But just, does anyone have any quick questions? Oh, yeah.
Hare Krishna. When Nimai Pandit was going around debating, I was always under the impression that he was trying to establish the absolute truth. That was the point of the debates. But if he wasn't establishing that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead when he was debating in his earlier days, then how was he winning so many arguments if he wasn't using Krishna as the basis of the other?
Oh, he was just actually, when sometimes the pure devotees that were living there, the pure Vaishnava devotees who were living in Navadvip at that time would come to him and say, you're teaching all this logic and, this grammar and, but, this is not the goal of life. Developing pure love for Krishna, bhakti yoga, devotional service is the goal of life. Nimai Pandit would not disagree with him. He would say, yes, I know, but at present, I'm just performing my pastimes as a Brahmin scholar. So, it's, and he was teaching, he was in the school, he was teaching this, and this grammar and this logic and Sanskrit, and then he met his spiritual master and he changed. We see in so many pastimes, Krishna's teaching us. I mean, Lord Chaitanya, he's the Supreme Lord. He doesn't have to have a spiritual master, but he's teaching us by his example as an acharya, the importance of accepting a spiritual master and getting that connection with the absolute truth, with Krishna. So we see, just like I was telling that pastime, he changed. After he got initiated, and then he gave up his as a teacher of logic and grammar, he stopped that, and he started teaching the actual real essence of Vedic knowledge. So it's he's teaching by example the importance of accepting a spiritual master, the importance of not just becoming absorbed in philosophical debates and grammar and just, that there's a higher goal, there's a higher essence of knowledge and understanding and a higher goal in life. So it was just a kind of a pastime, you could say. He was like that. He was, and when he was, it was a beautiful pastime actually. He used to take all these students around. They used to walk around Navadvip after class, after their daily classes. He would walk around Navadvip with his students. And Navadvip at that time, it was like the seat of learning. All the big pundits and scholars and yogis and, they used to all come there to Navadvip to study and to get involved in philosophical debates and hearing transcendental knowledge. And so there was all these big pundits all over. So Lord Chaitanya, he was just a young boy. He was only like 11, 12, 13 years old. He'd be walking around Navadvip with his students, and he'd call out all the big pundits and have philosophical debates with them. And he'd always defeat them. He was completely in control of every argument and discussion, and but no one ever felt. But he also he was also. But no one ever felt offended. He acted very sweetly with everyone. And at this time, no one even knew he was Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They just thought he was a Brahmin scholar. But they all had this incredible attraction to him, because of his purity, because he's the Supreme Lord himself. They used to offer him all these gifts and they'd give him all these like milk sweets and beautiful oils and incense and different beautiful cloth, and it's amazing. So it was just a kind of a pastime that he was going through, when he was it appeared that he wasn't really giving the real essence of Vedic knowledge. Srila Prabhupada ki, Shri Caitanya Caritamrita ki.